The roar echoed through the mountains like living thunder. Eren ran through the dense forest, his bare feet bleeding over roots and sharp rocks, his lungs burning with each desperate breath. Behind him, breaking young trees as if they were dry branches, came the creature that had destroyed everything. A short-faced bear, 4 meters tall when standing, claws as long as stone daggers, jaws capable of crushing skulls as if they were eggs. But it wasn't just the bear. Eren was also fleeing from his own people, or what remained of them. 3 days ago, he was a respected hunter of the High-Water clan, a group of 40 people who lived on the banks of a generous river. Now, he was the only survivor, the only one who escaped the night everything crumbled. 20,000 years ago, during the height of the last ice age, South America was a continent of extreme contrasts. Glaciers covered the highest mountains, while vast plains stretched out, covered in hardy grasses and dense forests where sunlight barely touched the ground. And inhabiting this brutal world was megafauna, animals of proportions that defy modern imagination. Giant sloths, 3 meters tall, that fed standing up, tearing leaves from trees with immense claws. Toxodonts, hippopotamus-like creatures, weighing over a ton, grazing in noisy herds. Mastodons, ancestors of elephants, with curved tusks and thick fur. And terrifying predators, saber-toothed tigers, dire wolves larger than any modern wolf, and short-faced bears, the largest terrestrial carnivores ever to walk the Americas. For the humans who inhabited this world, survival was not guaranteed. It was conquered day after day, hunt after hunt, with stone blades, spears of fire-hardened wood, and most importantly, with collective strategy. No single human could face the megafauna. But Eren was about to discover that none didn't mean impossible. 3 nights ago, the High-Water clan was celebrating. They had hunted a young mastodon that had separated from its herd, a source of meat, hide, and bones that would feed them all for weeks. The bonfires blazed brightly. Children frolicked among the adults. The elders told stories of the first hunters. Eren, at 22 winters old, laughed beside Kira, the young woman with whom he planned to start a family when the next spring arrived. Then, from the darkness beyond the trees, he emerged. The short-faced bear had been drawn by the smell of cooking meat, but when it attacked, it wasn't just for food. It was with a territorial fury that left no room for negotiation. The first to die was Torak, the clan leader, crushed by a single paw strike. Then came others. Spears ricocheted off their thick hides. The fire enraged him more than it repelled him. In the chaos, he saw Kira stumble. She saw the bear turn toward her. She saw the exact moment he should have rushed to her aid. But he froze. For 2 eternal seconds, fear paralyzed him. And when he finally moved, it was too late. Kira screamed his name one last time, before the silence. Eren ran. He ran as the clan died behind him. He ran as flames spread through the fir shelters. He ran until his legs gave out and he fell into an icy stream, vomiting bile and horror.
When the sun rose, Eren returned to the camp. Bodies, ashes, silence. The few who might have escaped had fled in different directions. There was no way to reunite the clan. There was no clan left to reunite. Eren buried what he could. He wept until he had no more tears. And then, carrying only a spear, a flint knife, a water skin, and the overwhelming guilt of having survived, he began to walk. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he couldn't stay. For days he wandered through the forests and plains, feeding on roots, insects, and small animals he could hunt. He avoided other clans. The shame of his cowardice haunted him like a shadow. Until, on the seventh night, while seeking shelter from a torrential rain, he found the cave. The entrance was narrow, hidden by thick vines and fallen stones, but Eren squeezed through it and found something that took his breath away. The cave was vast, with a high ceiling supported by natural stone columns, and every inch of the walls was covered in paintings. Not simple paintings, but elaborate art. Hunters facing giant sloths, mastodons being cornered in ravines, saber-toothed tigers being driven away with torches. But what caught Eren's attention was a specific painting at the back of the cave. It showed a man alone, not in a group, but truly alone, facing a short-faced bear. The man held something in his hands that Eren didn't recognize, a kind of net or lasso, and around the bear there were markings that looked like traps. Beneath the painting, symbols that Eren could somewhat decipher, for his grandmother had taught him the ancient language of the markings. Alone does not mean powerless. One can conquer many if he knows his fears. Eren touched the painting with trembling fingers. Who had lived here? Who had painted this? As he explored further, he found tools left behind. Spearheads more finely crafted than any he had ever seen, bones carved with counting marks, and in a small alcove, a human skull decorated with red ochre, clearly placed with reverence. This cave had been the home of someone special, someone who had survived alone in a world of giants. Eren decided to stay. He had nowhere else to go. During the first few days, he cleaned the cave, organized the ancient tools he found, and tried to imitate the stone-chipping techniques he saw on the leftover spear points. At night, he studied the paintings, as if they were lessons from a long-dead teacher. One painting showed hunters using fire to drive animals. Another showed stake traps hidden under leaves. A third showed how to use the terrain, cliffs, rivers, fallen trees, as allies in hunting. Eren began to understand. It wasn't about brute force. It was about strategy, about turning weaknesses into advantages, about making the environment fight for you. His first solo hunt was a disaster. He tried to take down a young guanaco, an ancestor of the llama, and the animal simply outpaced him. Eren returned to the cave hungry and frustrated. But on his second attempt, he used what he had learned from the paintings. He built a simple snare trap near a water trail. He waited, hidden and motionless, for hours. And it worked. The guanaco was trapped. Eren swiftly felled it with his spear. And for the first time since the death of his clan, he felt something beyond despair. He felt capability. He could do this. He could survive alone.
2 moons later, as Eren dried meat in the sun near the cave entrance, he heard it. That unmistakable roar. His blood ran cold. It was the same bear. He knew it deep in his soul. The same one that had destroyed his clan. The animal emerged from the forest, enormous and terrifying. Its flared nostrils sniffed the air, and its small but watchful eyes fixed on Eren. This time, Eren didn't run. Not because he was brave, but because his feet simply wouldn't obey. Fear pinned him to the ground. The bear advanced slowly, each step making the earth tremble. Eren gripped the spear in his hand. His heart thundered in his chest. Memories of the night of the massacre flooded his mind. The screams, the blood, Kira's face. The bear stopped 10 meters away. It reared up on its hind legs, reaching its terrifying maximum height, and roared, a sound that sent birds fleeing from the surrounding trees. It was a challenge, a reminder of who was the king of that land. And then something changed in Eren. He looked at the cave behind him, at the paintings he had studied, at the tools he had learned to make, at the decorated skull of the ancient inhabitant who had survived alone. "Alone doesn't mean powerless," Eren shouted back. It wasn't a cry of terror, but of defiance. The bear, surprised, lowered itself back to all fours. Its eyes studied Eren differently now. Then, slowly, it turned and disappeared back into the forest. It wasn't defeat, it was recognition. The bear knew this human was not easy prey. It wasn't worth the effort. Eren fell to his knees, trembling, sweating, but alive. And for the first time since losing everything, he smiled. He had faced the monster that destroyed his clan, and survived. Now the real journey would begin, not just to survive, but to dominate, to become something this world of giants had never seen, a human who didn't need a clan because he himself was a force of nature. In the months following the confrontation with the bear, Eren changed. Not physically, though his muscles had hardened with constant work and his scars deepened, but mentally. The cave of paintings became his university, and the animals around him his unwitting teachers. Each day he observed. He observed how the giant sloths protected their young, always keeping them between themselves and potential predators. He observed how the toxodons communicated through deep sounds that vibrated through the ground. He observed how saber-toothed tigers hunted in pairs during the mating season and alone the rest of the year. And more importantly, he observed the patterns. Giant animals had routines. They drank from the same rivers. They followed the same trails. They slept in the same places. If you knew their routines, you knew them. If you knew them, you could predict. If you could predict, you could act. Eren began to take notes, not writing as he didn't know letters, but symbols carved into bones. Circles for water sources, triangles for resting areas, and wavy lines for migration trails. The cave filled with his studies. It was during a hunting expedition that Eren made a discovery that would change everything. He was tracking a herd of guanacos when he heard faint moans coming from a nearby ravine. He cautiously approached and found a dire wolf pup, a prehistoric wolf species larger and more robust than modern wolves, trapped between rocks, its hind leg clearly broken. The adult wolf, probably its mother, lay dead nearby, a victim of a landslide. Eren should have killed the pup. Meat was meat. But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the animal's eyes. There was no hatred in them, only pain and fear. Perhaps it was the memory of his own loneliness. He picked up the pup, which tried to bite him too weakly to cause harm, and took it back to the cave. For weeks, Eren cared for the animal. He immobilized its paw with branches and tendons, he fed it pieces of chewed meat to aid digestion, and he kept it warm by the fire. The wolf, which Eren began to call Shadow because of its dark fur, gradually recovered. But what happened next was most extraordinary. Shadow didn't run away. Even when its paw healed completely, even when Eren left the cave entrance open, the wolf remained. Not as a domesticated animal, Shadow retained its wild nature, but as a partner. When Eren hunted, Shadow followed him. When he camped, Shadow stood guard. When they ate, they shared the prey. It was an alliance that neither of them had planned, but one that benefited both of them.
The first time they truly hunted together was out of necessity. Eren had spotted a lone giant sloth,
an old, slow female separated from her group. Normally, he would avoid it, as even in its age, a giant sloth was dangerous with its 30-centimeter claws. But it was the end of winter. Food was scarce, and that animal represented provisions for 2 full moons. Eren observed it for hours, studying its movements. The sloth had a pattern. It fed for 2 hours, then rested leaning against a specific tree. That's when he had an idea. Using shadow as a distraction, Eren positioned the wolf to bark and taunt from the opposite side, while he approached from behind with spears at the ready. The sloth, confused by the barking, turned to Shadow, who was agile enough to dance out of reach of the claws. This gave Eren the opening. His first spear struck the creature's thick neck. It wasn't lethal, but it was painful. The sloth roared and tried to turn around, but Shadow attacked again, this time biting its ankle. Eren threw the second spear, then the third. It took 20 minutes of coordinated attacks until the giant finally fell. When it was over, Eren and Shadow were both panting, covered in blood, but alive. They had taken down a beast that would have required 10 men, and they did it in 2. News travels strangely in the wildlands. Other clans began to notice signs, carcasses of giant animals with unusual hunting marks, footprints of a single human accompanied by a predator, not hunted by him, sophisticated traps in unexpected places. Rumors spread. They spoke of a ghost man who lived in the mountains, of a hunter who commanded wolves, of someone who faced the megafauna alone and won. Some said it was a spirit, others that it was a demon. Few believed he was human. Eren was unaware of his growing legend. He simply lived. But his life was about to get complicated. It was during a reconnaissance expedition that Eren heard screams. Humans. In danger. His first reaction was to flee. He had abandoned human company, cut ties with that part of himself. But something stronger pulled him toward the screams. He arrived at a clearing where 5 hunters, 3 men, 2 women, were cornered by a pair of saber-toothed tigers. The tigers were clearly defending territory, not hunting. But the humans had panicked, attacked first, and now the felines were furious. One of the men was already wounded, bleeding from claw marks on his arm. The others formed a circle with trembling spears, knowing that in seconds they would be massacred. Eren should have let nature take its course, but his hand was already moving, grabbing a torch he always kept ready. He quickly lit it with flint and carried it to the clearing, shouting in coordination with Shadow, who appeared from another angle. The effect was instantaneous. The tigers, already nervous at the wolf's presence and now with fire, retreated. They emitted warning growls but did not attack. Eren held the torch high, moving slowly between the felines and the humans. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, the tigers decided that this prey was not worth the effort. They turned and disappeared into the forest. The hunters looked at Eren as if they were seeing a spirit. "You are him, the ghost of the mountain." Eren didn't answer. He simply assessed the wounded man, deep cuts but not lethal, gestured basic first aid instructions with his hands, and began to walk away. "Wait!" the group leader shouted. "Our clan! We need help! There's a bear that—" Eren stopped. "A bear attacked our camp. It killed 6, including our leader. We don't know how to fight it. But they say you face giants. Please." Eren felt something tighten in his chest. Memories of the night he lost everything flooded his mind. He could say no. He should say no. But then he looked at Shadow, who had been saved by an act of compassion when Eren didn't need to. Perhaps this was his second chance. Not to save Kira, she was lost forever, but to do what he didn't do that night. Stay and fight. Slowly, Eren nodded.
The Redstone clan had established camp in a sheltered valley, surrounded by cliffs on 3 sides. It was a defensible location against most threats, but it had become a trap. The short-faced bear, not the same one that destroyed Eren's clan, but an equally massive one, had established territory in that area. It attacked the camp every few days, always at dusk, always unpredictable. When Eren arrived with the hunters he had rescued, he was met with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "He's just a man," someone murmured. "How can he help us where our warriors have failed?" But Tara, the clan's elderly matriarch, silenced the objections. "He faced saber-toothed tigers without fear and walks with a wolf as a brother," she said. "Either he's crazy or he knows something we don't. Either way, we have no other options." Eren spent the first day just observing. He studied the valley, the trails the bear used, the trees it marked, the remains of its previous hunts. And gradually a plan took shape in his mind. He wasn't going to wait for the bear to attack again. He was going to lead it to a battlefield of his choosing. Eren chose a narrow ravine half a kilometer from the camp. It was a place the bear frequently passed through, marked by scratches on trees and territorial droppings. For 2 days he worked tirelessly, with hesitant help from some braver hunters. They dug shallow holes, covered with thin branches and leaves, not deep enough to capture the bear, but enough to make it stumble. They sharpened stakes and positioned them at angles on the sides of the ravine. They prepared torches soaked in fat along the path. But the most important element was the simplest: rope. Eren had learned to braid plant fibers and animal tendons into surprisingly strong ropes. He spent hours creating a thick net, reinforced with bones tied together for weight. "How will this stop a bear?" asked one of the hunters skeptically. "It won't stop it, it will delay it. And in a fight like this, seconds decide everything." On the 3rd night, he was ready. Eren positioned himself at the entrance of the ravine at dusk with Shadow at his side. The rest of the clan was hidden in elevated positions, armed with spears, rocks, and torches as instructed. Eren held a piece of decaying meat, a strong aroma that would travel far. He yelled, banged on trees with a log, made every noise he could. He was calling the bear. It didn't take long. The roar echoed through the mountains, that sound that made your blood run cold and your guts clench. And then it emerged from the trees. Bigger than Eren remembered, 4 meters of pure muscle and fury, small eyes fixed on him with predatory intelligence. Eren threw the meat into the ravine and ran. The bear, enraged by the provocation, charged after him. It all depended on timing. Eren ran through the ravine, leaping over the traps he knew where they were. The bear, heavier and less agile in tight spaces, stumbled on the first ones. It didn't fall, it was too resilient, but it slowed. "Now!" Eren shouted. The hunters on the heights lit their torches. Light exploded in the canyon, disorienting the animal. Shadow attacked from the side, biting the bear's ankle before dancing out of reach. The bear roared and turned, exactly what Eren wanted. Net! 3 hunters on each side pulled ropes. The heavy net fell from trees above, covering the bear's back and head. It didn't stop it, but it enraged it and temporarily blinded it. The bear struggled, tearing the net with powerful claws. But those precious seconds were enough. Eren ran, not away, but toward the animal. With a primal cry, he leaped, spear in hand, and struck the bear's exposed neck as it struggled with the net. The spear penetrated deep. Blood gushed, but the bear was not yet dead. With a violent movement, it hurled Eren against the canyon wall. Pain exploded in his back. His left arm snapped. The bear lunged forward, free from the shattered net, ready for the final blow. But then, dozens of spears rained down from above. The hunters who had hesitated now fought with renewed fury. Shadow attacked again, this time targeting the bear's eyes. And Eren, with his good arm, picked up one last spear from the ground, and as the bear turned, confused by multiple attacks, plunged it straight into the giant's heart. The bear roared one last time, not in anger, but almost in surprise. Then it fell. The valley trembled with the impact of 5 tons of dead predator hitting the ground. Silence. Then shouts, not of terror, but of victory. The Redstone clan had won, and Eren, bleeding and with a broken arm but alive, was carried on shoulders like a hero.
Terra offered Eren a position of honor in the clan. "Stay with us," she said. "Be our hunting leader. Teach us your techniques. Find a wife. Have children. You don't need to live alone anymore." For a moment, Eren considered it. It would be good to have company again, to have a purpose that wasn't just daily survival, maybe even to rebuild what he had lost. But when he closed his eyes, he saw no future there. He saw the cave, the paintings, the vastness of the unexplored lands. And he realized he had changed too much. He was no longer the Eren who needed a clan. He was something new, something this world had never seen before. "I am grateful," Eren finally said, "but my path is different. There is still much I don't understand about the giant beasts, much I need to learn." Terra nodded, too wise to argue. "Then go," she said, "but know that when we need you, we'll call, and we expect you to come." "I will," Eren promised. He left 3 days later, his arm immobilized, Shadow by his side, carrying provisions that the clan insisted on giving him. In the following months, Eren's legend grew. Other clans began to seek him out, asking for help against giant sloths that destroyed crops, against mastodons that blocked migratory routes, against saber-toothed tigers that hunted near camps. Eren helped, but always strategically. He never attacked animals unnecessarily. He always tried to drive them away to other areas first, and only killed when absolutely necessary. He began to realize something. Humans and megafauna didn't have to be eternal enemies. There was a possible balance. But that vision would be brutally tested. It was Shadow who first alerted him. The wolf became agitated one morning, howling southward, its fur standing on end. Eren followed its gaze and saw smoke, lots of smoke. A burning camp. When they arrived, they found the Redstone clan, or what remained of it. But it wasn't an animal that attacked them this time. It was another human clan. Slave hunters who came from the north, capturing members of smaller clans for forced labor in territories they were permanently establishing. Terra was dead. Dozens of others too. The survivors had been taken. Eren felt a rage like never before. He had faced the greatest predators on Earth. He had subdued beasts that terrorized entire clans. But humans were different. They were intelligent, organized, and infinitely more cruel than any animal. Eren looked at Shadow. The wolf returned the gaze, and Eren saw something new in him. Not just companionship, but absolute loyalty. "We'll bring them back," Eren said. And as he followed the captor's trail northward, something became clear. He was no longer just a giant hunter. He was about to become something greater. Protector, warrior, legend. The king of the giant beasts was emerging, and the prehistoric world would never be the same again.